Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back, and it is a return of one of our classic series on the channel. Obviously Wednesday has been a time for Motorsport Manager, but we've kind of weighed up our options.
Yeah.
Motorsport Manager was doing alright on the channel, but we thought a better place for it would be for you guys to see the carnage live. So every Tuesday around 6ish, we'll go live on Twitch with our Motorsport Manager, which meant a vacant spot on the Wednesday. So what better place to kind of bring back the driver rivalries and ask the kind of F1 who's better and the track comparisons. So with it bringing back, we thought we better go in with like a big one.
Yeah. Two big boys facing it off.
Two big boys of the last kind of 2 decades, certainly.
They won some stuff, and then they didn't win some stuff.
Yeah, they both have that in common with them. And if you haven't guessed already, that is the thumbnail. That is Sebastian Vettel versus Fernando Alonso. Obviously, recently in the news with Sebastian Vettel leaving Ferrari at the end of the 2020 season, and with all the kind of movings around, Fernando Alonso has been heavily linked with a return to the Renault seat. So we thought a good time to talk about their kind of respected F1 careers. And, you know, we're in the teams where they were most successful.
Yeah. There is one common top that we decided not to wear because that's where it went downhill for, well, kind of downhill for both of them.
Yeah, it didn't work out as either of them had hoped it would in that one.
Yeah.
But if you guys haven't seen a driver rivalries before, this is how it goes down. So we will run through the stats of each driver in a comparison there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compare their qualifying, their races, their overtakes, defending, and what we think in this one, their team ethic. I mean, I think people will probably guess who will win on...
It's a tough decision between the two.
On that front. Before me and Stephen conclude giving our thoughts on who we think is better, and then obviously we'll throw it back to you guys in who you think is better, Sebastian Vettel or Fernando Alonso. But we'll get into stats first, and who do you want to go to stats first, Fernando or Sebastian?
Let's go Fernando.
Fernando's up first. So here is Fernando Alonso's stats. Fernando Alonso is a 2-time world champion, winning those 2 titles in 2005 and 2006 with the Renault F1 team. He has competed in 312 races across his career to date. He has 32 race wins to his name, 97 podiums, 22 pole positions, and he has 23 fastest laps.
On to Sebastian Vettel's stats. He's won 4 world championships, raced in 240 races with 53 wins to his name, 120 podiums, 57 pole laps, and 38 fastest race laps.
Now, we did mention it earlier in the video, but they have also competed with Ferrari, so we're having their Ferrari head-to-head in wins and podiums as well. So during Fernando Alonso's tenure with the team, he secured 11 wins for Scuderia Ferrari and 44 podiums.
Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel had 14 Ferrari wins with 54 podiums.
So we've had a look at the stats there, guys. But before we kind of get on to comparing their on-track skills, shall we say, you can't look at this rivalry without looking at the years between 2010 and 2012, where obviously on track they were directly going for titles, and Sebastian Vettel came out on top. In 2010 he didn't lead the championship up until that last race where he overtook. Alonso failed to overtake Vitaly Petrov to progress up the field in that race, and in 2012 Sebastian Vettel came out on top as well, Fernando leading with his consistency through the majority of the season, but when the Red Bull car really came underneath him, Sebastian Vettel was able to kind of, I think there was a run of 4 races where he took 100 points out of 100 possible points, and that really swung things in his favour. Now, Sebastian had a better car overall the entire season than Fernando Alonso, and Alonso did well to kind of hang in there in the title. But if we're looking at it directly, Vettel beat Fernando in the head-to-head. So he won in 2010, he won in 2012. In 2012, I would say it's probably their best seasons that both of the drivers have driven. But for me, Sebastian is the guy who comes out on top.
Yeah. He found it. He found that something extra to get him across the line. Against a Fernando who was just putting in consistent performances. Vettel pulled out the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now I think head to head, we've said Sebastian Vettel's the winner, but now we're going to look at their on-track skills and see who we reckon's the kind of winner out of those. Now we're going to take a first look at qualifying.
So, qualifying, Sebastian Vettel. The clear winner in this head-to-head contest. 57 poles. Pretty impressive stuff. He is a great driver for just putting in that fastest lap, I guess. Under no pressure. Sometimes pressure gets to him in the race, but qualifying is where Sebastian shines.
I'd agree with that. I think Fernando has always been the one who sets up his car more on Saturday for the race day on the Sunday, because you don't get any points on a Saturday. But those pole position stats are always nice to bear. But, especially on the street circuit, as Singapore has kind of been a place where Sebastian Vettel has really shone. And there is only really one pole lap that comes to mind with me with Fernando Alonso, and that is the 2007 Monaco pole lap. That was a pretty impressive lap for him. Street circuit poles always look more impressive. But Sebastian Vettel has definitely, across his career, been the better qualifier out of the two. Moving on to race, and Fernando Alonso for me comes out on top of this for a driver. I think Sebastian Vettel is very good when he leads a race, and he's very good at controlling the tempo of the race, but earning victories from behind and really battling for victories, defending against kind of opponents, pressuring them as well. I think Fernando just, comes out on top of this one. His racecraft is just a little bit ahead of Sebastian Vettel's, and certainly not necessarily maybe getting the best out of his car, but he would always, his level of consistency in performances, the 2012 season being a prime example of that, in terms of just, he was a consistent podium finisher. He just finds a way of getting the job done.
Well, yeah, it was a very compelling argument. I think for Sebastian Vettel, especially in recent memory and maybe unfairly, he's got a bit of a reputation for slipping up, I think, at crucial moments, and basically costing him not just the race, but momentum in the title race. It always seems to come to that point. Last year we had Canada in his fight with Lewis. He went off and then fairly or unfairly got penalised. Had mistakes in Germany. I could list all the spins, but we'll be here for a while when he's leading a race. So yeah, I think Alonso, just with that consistency there, probably tops Vettel on this one.
Yeah, I think probably across Fernando's career, he's maintained a high level of performance no matter what car he's driving. You can question whatever you can about Fernando off track, but on track, he's always had that high level performance. Where Sebastian, in his prime years in Red Bull, his level of performance was really high. But I think, especially in the Ferrari years, it's been really high and then also had a lot more low moments in there. And it's just that inconsistency that probably wins it across on Fernando on this front. But in terms of overtaking, who do you think is the better overtaker out of the two?
Well, this is a tough one. I think Seb, when it comes to Sebastian, I don't think he's known for overtaking. I would say he's a good overtaker. He's a solid racer. He's a 4-time world champion. But I wouldn't say he's necessarily known for his bold and ambitious overtakes. It's more on the defending department where Sebastian comes into it. But we'll come on to that next. But yeah, what about Alonso?
Alonso with overtaking, especially in his younger career, I think he's a very calculated overtaker, and he's definitely the smarter racer out of the two. I think Sebastian's a good overtaker, and he overtakes when he needs to, but he isn't necessarily, like you said, renowned for it. And one that comes out for me is the overtake. One of his best overtakes was the 2005 Suzuka Grand Prix when he went through 130R to make that move stick on Michael Schumacher, and then he later did, I think it was coming into turn 1 in that race as well. I think overtaking someone like Schumacher, who is an aggressive defender, to say the least, he certainly fights tooth and nail for his position and the way he positions the car. I think Fernando, throughout his career, he's had a few standout performances on the overtaking front, but he was always calm and calculated. He always tended to make the move stick, other than obviously 2010 would be the biggest note against him in this, with Abu Dhabi, where he couldn't find a way past Vitaly Petrov, which essentially cost him the title in 2010, as he wasn't able to progress enough through the field to gain that first title for Ferrari, and essentially didn't get a title with Ferrari. But yes, defending. I think this one goes to Fernando Alonso as well, because you've seen it as recently as his last season in F1 in 2018, defending against, in his McLaren, which is quite clearly in 2018 wasn't up with the top cars on the grid. But I think it was Australia. He was defending very well against Max Verstappen, and we all know Max certainly is aggressive in his overtaking style, and Alonso used all his kind of experience and knowledge in that. And again, go back all the way more to the start. You look at places like Imola against Schumacher as well, where he kind of kept Schumacher behind. Yes, Imola is a difficult track to do it, but with the pressure of a 7-time world champion on your tail, it is pretty tough to do so. And I think Alonso has been described by fellow racers as guys, he's a fair racer, but he will defend hard on that basis.
Yeah. Sebastian, I would say, is a pretty hard defender as well. Pretty aggressive, I would say. He's probably known for those starts where he just launches himself forward and shuts the door, slam shuts.
Yeah, he's the kind of sharp jag across, which obviously hasn't come off well at times. Singapore 2017 would be the main case for that one.
But as well, defending during the race, there have been a few incidents as well. There's been possibly a bit too aggressive, not too controlled. But maybe this is unfairly. Again, in his Ferrari days, I think he's picked up more on these mistakes than others. There was that one with Leclerc and Vettel last year in Brazil. Yeah.
I think a lot of time, if you think back to his Red Bull days, a lot of the time in the races where he won and everything, in a position where he needed to defend positions more, he was more managing a gap. Yeah. And I think that's his biggest strength as a driver, in terms of when he's out in front of that Grand Prix, or he's having to kind of put in consistent lap times to kind of make up margins in pit stops. That is a real strength, I think, of Sebastian Vettel. And so he hasn't needed to defend on track as much as well. Obviously, Fernando's been in cars throughout his career. There have been much more within the mix of a midfield pack than what Sebastian had.
He's a great controller of the race when he needs to. When he's got, the race, I'm trying to think of the expression, by the scruff
of the neck.
That's the one. That's Sebastian's race. You can't take it off him. Unless,
Yeah. But team ethic. This is an interesting one to put onto it. Team ethic. Who's winning on team ethic one, Stephen?
Sebastian Vettel, the good guy, I think is the best way. He gets on with everyone. He's a good team player, I think you say. All his press conferences, all his radio messages. Very good team player. He loves the sport. He loves the teams. Alonso, on the other hand, I can't question. Sorry, he loves the sport. Every racer loves the sport. That's an unfair comment. But he loves the teams he races for.
Yeah, I think with Sebastian Vettel on that front, his hero was Michael Schumacher, and the way that Michael Schumacher went in terms of creating a team environment around it. I mean, Sebastian still to this day maintains good relationships with those people he won the championship with at Red Bull.
Yeah.
And, I think even recently, Christian Horner still says that Seb pops into the Red Bull garage and sees how people are getting on. And that was, his idol was Michael, and that's what he did. So therefore, that's how he wanted to carry himself. And we all know that Seb has a love for Ferrari. And so, yeah, he just loved the whole Ferrari team ethos and wanted to throw himself in being the best he can. With Fernando Alonso, in Renault days, I think he had that. I think he was very good. This obviously first in Renault days. The team was around him. I think they loved him. He managed his relationship with his teammate in Giancarlo Fisichella very well. It was just after 2007, that season where it all went so wrong for Fernando. And I don't believe 100% of the rumours that he's incredibly toxic in these environments, though. I believe Fernando is a guy who gives 110%, and he has these high standards. And if you don't meet his high standards, then he's not going to he's going to tell you basically how it is. And that isn't maybe the best way of going about things in Formula One. So Fernando loses out to this one on Sebastian Vettel because there's no smoke without fire, and he probably hasn't managed the relationships within teams the best that he could have been, probably the kindest. I know people in the comments below will certainly be a lot more harsh on Fernando on that basis. So, we've given our points, we've balanced it up. There's some things in favour of Fernando, there's some things in favour of Sebastian Vettel. But the question now is, who do we think is the better driver out of the two to kind of settle this driver rivalry? So, Stephen, who's your winner?
It's gotta be the 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. No question. He won 4 world titles. It speaks for itself. You can argue some seasons it was the car, but you still have to win those titles. You still have to take control of those races and find what it takes to be a world champion. 4 times in a row.
Yeah, massively impressive. And I think those 2010 and 2012 performances against Fernando Alonso edge in his favour as well. I mean, for me, I make no hide that Fernando's my favourite driver because, he helped me get into the sport back in 2005. But for me, as a complete driver, if we're just looking at this pure on track basis, I think Fernando Alonso is the better driver. But there is more to being an F1 driver than just on-track performance. And I believe Sebastian Vettel encapsulates that a lot more, and he was able to capitalise on his period of success a lot more than what Fernando did. And, arguably you could say with Vettel, his period, he had a car that was capable of winning championships for longer. So therefore, that's where the championship advantage comes in. But still, Fernando moved to McLaren in 2007, and how that all kind of fell apart. It wasn't entirely Fernando's fault, but he still had a part to play in that downfall. Yeah. He wasn't able to capitalise on the fact that he had the best car in the championship that year and didn't win the title with it.
Exactly.
So, for this rivalry, may surprise a few, I'm going to say that Sebastian Vettel also wins. So me and Stephen have both gone for Sebastian Vettel in who's better. It is a close one, and I think they're both absolutely fantastic drivers. But like I said, that more complete package to an F1 driver is what edges it for me for Sebastian Vettel. But that's what we said. Now let's hear what you said. Get in the comments down below. What would you compare the drivers on, and who edges it out for you on their kind of ability and skill? It would be interesting to kind of hear in the comments down below. But if they're new around here or haven't done so already, what can they do, Stephen?
They can like, they can subscribe, they can ding that bell.
Ding that bell. But it's been a fun one. It's great to have Driver Rivalries back, and it will be alternating each week with Driver Rivalries and track comparison. So next week we'll have a track comparison video ready for you on Wednesday. But guys, we hope you've enjoyed it today. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.